This is Dr. Charles Parker, and you're listening to Core Brain Journal. It's a place where I connect both fresh discoveries and interesting different perspectives from advanced mind science with the realities of real people and everyday life down on Main Street. Well, welcome aboard, folks. It's Dr. Charles Parker one more time here at Core Brain Journal, and we have a very interesting guest today, Dr. Kelly Morrow-Baez. Welcome, Dr. Baez. Really happy to have you on board.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So I'm going to do a brief introduction, and then we'll find out a little bit more about you in a moment. So Dr. Kelly Morrow-Baez is called herself the FitShrink, interestingly enough. She's a licensed professional counselor from Columbus, Georgia, has a bright, engaging, effervescent personality. In this short period of time I've been talking to her, so you're going to enjoy listening to her. She has a PhD in psychology and over 10 years in psychologic practice. She is a health motivation expert, writer, speaker, and private coach, and she is on a mission to change the way we think about getting healthy. Dr. Baez has been featured on Dr. Oz Good Life magazine and has added her expertise to articles in Forbes, Teen Vogue, Spark People, and more. So thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
So then the issue then is, tell us a little bit more about your personal life, who you are, where you are, what you do, and what that mission actually is.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I am a mother to two young kids. We homeschool, and so I'm very family oriented, but I also have a lot going on with traveling and that sort of thing. My husband's a professional polo player, so we do a tremendous amount of traveling, and what I've learned from that is to be very flexible and to reevaluate my routine and perhaps what my habits are so that I can then turn it into something more positive and motivating in my diet and exercise routine.
Well, let me catch you real quickly on that. Sorry, because you caught me on the polo player. My son was, before he became a physician, was mucking stalls in the San Diego Polo Club. And playing polo with Argentinian polo players. So it's kind of a side comment in our family. Do you have some ponies and you get involved with them, or how does that work?
We do. He has about 12 polo ponies that he has personally, and I get involved in it in that I enjoy it. I get to ride all of the best horses, and I'll get out there and swing the mallet around. I grew up riding as well, so it was a easy match for us. You know, we speak the same language, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. So we definitely enjoy it. It's a very wonderful, positive lifestyle. So it keeps us busy, and it's just an interesting way to go through life. Sounds like a lot of fun. So get back to the subject of mind health. So then, how would you typify what you do? You have a very interesting family there in your busy life. What do you do professionally? Well, I'm a health motivation expert, and my passion and my mission is to reach as many people as possible and help them understand that there's a missing piece to the weight loss puzzle. You know, if it were up to just diet or just exercise and just finding the right plan, we would all be fit and healthy. But the reality is there are beautiful plans out there. There's beautiful exercise plans and beautiful food plans that we could choose from and apply, but there's that missing piece, and that missing piece is mindset. And so what I've done is taken my professional experience as a licensed professional counselor and my expertise in psychology, and I've pulled from that and used that now to help people bridge that gap.
So we're really looking forward to hearing about that. In fact, one of the things that Kelly has offered our listeners through corebrainjournal.com/064 download is a 25-day mindset for weight loss. Get this audio series, folks. I mean, this is a very big gift. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's going to be very interesting.
Oh, you're most welcome.
So what's going to happen here is that we're going to talk a little bit about examples of what she does and how that mindset can make a difference in people's lives. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, Kelly?
Well, I think that, what I have found in working with clients one-on-one is that they're not really looking to be elite athletes. What most people want is to feel better. They want to just, lose some weight, feel better, and get their numbers, their cholesterol, their blood pressure, and that sort of thing in track. And that's what I help people do. We don't need to make any crazy changes or do anything extreme. I think a lot of people are really surprised by just those simple shifts in the way that you think about your eating and the way you think about exercise can really mean the difference between losing that motivation in the first week or maintaining it and making it a real lifestyle change.
So give us an example, if you will, of maybe one or two people wherein they were thinking in one way and didn't have the proper mindset, and then had this experience working with you.
Sure. One of them, the first one that comes to mind is a woman who was at an age, she was around 70, and she was at an age where she thought, well, there's not really much change I'm going to do at this point. And what I was able to help her understand is that it is never too late. And truly it is those small, simple changes that when you build them over time do yield the results. So when we started working together, she had pretty severe asthma and a lot of pain in her joints and had a hard time walking for long distances. And now she's got a tremendous amount of energy. She's lost about 100 pounds and she walks every day for an hour. So it's changes like that it's not just what you do for that hour that you're exercising, but that can really transform a life. That can transform the way you interact with the world. And so that's what I'm about. That's what I'm passionate about helping people do. And it in turn inspires me to be the best I can be at this.
So what would be an example of where a person, we're always interested here at Core Brain Journal, where people get stuck? I've been stuck, you've been stuck. The issue is, I think really to start the whole conversation off is, how did you get interested in this in the first place? Where were you stuck as a developing professional? And then you had this illumination that was transformational for you.
Sure. Well, in my 20s, I was diagnosed with polycystic ovary syndrome, which is a metabolic disorder, which makes it very difficult to lose weight. Obesity is part of the syndrome in that there's an insulin resistance quality to it. So at that point, most women just do feel stuck. And at that point, I did feel stuck. Once I was diagnosed, I asked my doctor for a medication to counteract that. And he said, no, you need to go and lose weight. Now, at the time, that was kind of crushing because I was so confused. I thought, well, I have PCOS. How am I supposed to make a change? And I was very lucky to be able to apply what I know about psychology to myself and move forward with very small changes and start to feel better, because I was having some pretty severe physical effects. So I was motivated to get healthier, and I was fortunate enough to be able to make those changes. The next part of it was that I realized that my clients were in the same place, feeling stuck, feeling scared with these medical issues that were related to obesity. And, I was able to help them, again, move forward in just very simple step-by-step methods.
So was she limited in her thinking about food? Was it what she was eating, the specific content of what she was eating? How do you approach it? What's the nature of the most frequent problem? Let's put it that way.
I think that the nature of the most frequent problem is that most people come to me and they are in absolute information overload, and it's very much that all or nothing thinking that limits them and gets them stuck. And so what I try to do when I work with people is to break this down into just very small steps. And what we have found is that when you break them down into small steps, that step seems much more attainable. And so it's it's a lot like motivational interviewing. You know, you try to figure out what is the simplest step. And I like to tell my clients, let's get to the point where you can make this happen on your worst day, on the hardest day you have every week. What are we going to be able to accomplish? And that's where you start, because let's be honest, Chuck, your motivation is only as strong as it is on your worst day.
Mm-hmm. So you pick that first step as something, hey, I can do this. I don't care how bad it gets, I can do this.
Exactly.
But that takes some interviewing. There's no cookie cutter on that because everybody's different with that first step, I would imagine.
Exactly. And I think that does take a little bit of help to break it down. But I think, you know, also it takes a little bit of reassurance. It takes somebody to say, hey, that's okay. It's okay if 10 minutes is your starting point. No problem. You know, consistency beats intensity. So we're going to build from there, and that's okay.
So when you said 10 minutes, were you thinking about 10 minutes of exercise or 10 minutes of waiting to not eat custard pie or something? What were you thinking about when you said that?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because really it's both. The answer is both. It's something that a lot of people don't know, and this is very powerful. First, yes, the starting point with exercise might be 10 minutes. I have met people who struggle to walk to the mailbox and back. And so that's very important to start where you are, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. The other interesting thing about eating is that we have found is if you can delay your response to a craving for 15 minutes, then chances are that craving is going to resolve, and from then on, you won't have that craving any longer.
That's interesting. I haven't heard that before.
Yes. And it, you know, if it doesn't go away, chances are it will go away. But if it doesn't go away, the cool part is that you'll have more understanding of what's causing the craving, and then decide how you want to handle it going forward.
Because then, and that's the next step of breaking things down into small pieces. Because yes, there'll be a strategy that's going to be involved with some successful way of integrating your own progress with that particular problem.
Right.
Gotcha. So then tell us a little bit more about where you would see people. What's the most common thing that you see in the people that you've consulted with regarding where the biggest difficulty when they get started?
The biggest difficulty is in finding your why, in finding your big reason why. I think a lot of people sell themselves short, and what works best is to get as deep as possible with your why. Get to the point where you get past the thinking level and into the feelings level, because a lot of people start at the top and they're very much in that thought process, and they say, okay, well, I need to go to the gym today because I need to lose weight, and that's where they leave their motivation up there. And what we found is that if they'll take it down several clicks, then get to that feeling level, and our response to feelings are so much more efficient and so much faster that we don't really have time to talk ourselves out of anything. And so defining the why is the number one mistake that people make, and the most powerful thing that you can do to get right, to move forward.
Well, you know, I've often thought about why, because you, of course, all of us know about the fellow with the TED Talk, and it doesn't come to my mind right now, but where he really talks about why in such an interesting way. But why has a measure not only of getting down to feelings, but it has a transcendent quality, because you then think about your life in a larger picture as opposed to, should I eat potato salad?
Right.
And that larger picture then it hooks up with the feeling and what your mission is, and the larger picture of where you're going with your life in the first place.
Yes, absolutely. So, and a lot of people will say that your why should make you cry, and I think there's some truth to that.
So then, after you get the why, how does a person apply that why in an ongoing basis? Do you return to that in your work with an individual, and do they share that specific why with you, and then does that become part of what your role is as a therapist?
I think that my role is to help them slow down that thought process to get to that why and to coach them to get to that point. I will caution people not to share their why with, Facebook, for instance. This is not something that needs to be shared out in public. This is something that really needs to be a private thing. And I think that if you're doing it right and you get to that core reason, it doesn't feel very good to share in any event. So my role is to help them get to that point, and then we build a plan that's specific to them that also takes into account what they feel like they can achieve based on what their lifestyle is.
Well, we haven't rehearsed this, but what's coming to mind is, Shire Pharmaceutical has a product now that's for binge eating. And I wonder, because some of what you're talking about, I'm sure has something to do with binge eating.
Yes.
And I wonder, go ahead, please. You go ahead and answer that. What were you thinking?
Oh, well, no, I'm sorry. I was just going to say that my initial reaction to this is that I think that, again, we're stepping into a medical resolution to it, that there's so many underlying aspects to binge eating. And if you apply the medical resolution right off the bat, I think that you're selling yourself short and you're not getting that deep healing that really can transform your life in many other ways.
Well, because you're really not solving the underlying problem. You're fixing it on a certain level, but you're not actually addressing it and coming in full contact with it.
Exactly.
So, apropos of the binge eating question, though, you do work with people who do have binge eating problems where they just open up and can't stop.
Sure, I do.
And so the why then can be applied numerous times during the day.
Yes, and in fact it should be, and that's one of the reasons why we try to get down to that feelings level, because it's something that's so much easier to access regardless of what hat you're wearing. I work with a lot of women who are juggling work and getting the kids to soccer practice and whatnot, and they wear many, many different hats throughout the day, but by connecting their why with their core feelings about the situation, they can access that motivation no matter what they're doing. Because it's not just that hour that you're exercising, or it's not just that hour that you're preparing your meals. This is lifestyle change runs across your day, and it's important to make sure that you keep that in mind no matter what you're doing.
Now, the technique on this, Kelly, do you do this virtually? Do you provide these consults anywhere, or do they have to be there in your region? How does all that work?
I do have plans to start group coaching in Columbus, Georgia, but right now the coaching is all done by phone or Skype.
Mm-hmm. So, and then the next part of it, I'm sure people are wondering, which in any healthy direction program is the exercise piece. So if you have an approach toward the content, which is the food, then I know that you have some skill in working with ongoing motivation over time. And I'd like you to share with our audience some of that perspective, if you will.
Sure. When we talk about keeping the motivation going, for example, with exercise, that's something that, again, people tend to get pulled into the latest and greatest plan that they see on the internet or in a magazine. And while those are perfectly fine and they're wonderful, if it doesn't fit well with your lifestyle, then there's not really any way to incorporate it in the long term. So what we try to do is pull from whatever, it almost ends up being a very eclectic approach, because you pull from whatever plan, whatever suits you from these plans that you see, and then put together your own plan for exercise and do it in a way that's progressive and it suits whatever your limitations and whatever your expectations are.
Now, so that you're putting that structure in, and then you put it in do you have them journal? What's the actual technique of then, because you probably don't meet with them every day, so how do they actually stay on track with what the progress is?
Well, I meet with them once a week, and what I do ask is that they'll track their food with an online food tracker. And that's for two reasons. It's not just the nutritional aspect to it, although I think in some cases that's important, but I think it's also important to incorporate the mindfulness about what they're eating, and that, like we talked about before, that time between having a craving and then responding to the craving, and using a food tracker helps tremendously with that. So we talk a lot about that in the coaching process. So there's that aspect to it. But then also in terms of accountability, I do ask that people just be honest. We don't expect perfection. I would rather have someone say, you know what, I couldn't do this week. And that's great. That's excellent. We can learn from that and readjust and reapply and then try again in a slightly different way.
So my experience with motivation is that it's very much tied with self-esteem, and that if the person can see and actually experience their progress and understand that they have a certain measure of increased self-mastery, that they can then stay with the program more effectively.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. And it's interesting when people start to have success with eating what they need to eat for their health, and even those small steps in exercise and making that exercise consistent, it has very far-reaching effects in terms of self-esteem. When you take that time to nurture yourself and care for yourself and help yourself feel stronger and healthier, you're sending a strong message to those around you as well. So it's both an internal message and an external message, and that can really redefine self-esteem in every aspect of a person's life.
Well, an additional thing that comes up is what people eat. You probably don't know this about me because this is our first time talking, but we've been very interested in gastrointestinal issues as they relate to brain function for many years now, and got on the whole gluten bandwagon in the first place and understand gluten and casein, and some of the guests that we've had on are nationally prominent gluten and casein authorities. Do you get into measurement and thinking about those immunity challenges in your work, or how does that take place?
I tend to keep it very simple because I think a lot of people, again, get overloaded in the beginning with trying to navigate all of the different choices and all of the different ways, what could go wrong if I eat this or that.
Oh, yeah.
Now, if I have a client who has an allergy to something, or they have, for example, if they're diabetic, then certainly we're going to talk about the different qualities of foods and what sorts of things we need to be choosing or not. But I tend to keep it very simple at first, especially, and then we can start getting a little bit more specific in terms of gluten if that's something that's a concern.
You're right about that. It is a big leap. I mean, yes. we see this all the time. It's like, I've had people almost throw a chair at me because I read the results from the test to them. I mean, a woman who was seriously addicted to milk, and her milk chart was just completely off the chart. She was just on her IgG testing was really bad. And she cried. She was upset because milk was her friend from childhood. And it took us a long time. I mean, if I had what you're talking about, if I had a different approach, which I didn't really, it's not my cup of tea, what you're talking about. I haven't done it before. But ultimately, she settled down and it all did work out. But it reminds me also, while we're talking about this, of, I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Michael Greger's work, How Not to Die.
I'm familiar with the book, but not specifically with his research.
You would love it. I'm going to tell you that right now. If you haven't, you would love it. And right there in Core Brain Journal, it's one of my 3 favorite books. I'm listening to it when I'm in the car because on Audible. And the guy is so smart and he's so engaging. But I'm telling you, be forewarned, it would be a big leap from where you are. You're starting at a different level. But it's almost entirely a vegetarian with great documentation on why people should practice vegetarian, and how we all get, not they, me, you, all of us get corrupted by what we're eating. And He's got all the research. He had somebody give him a bunch of money from Canada. I mean, like millions of dollars. So he's got a whole team of people just researching all this and put a book together, and that's why he titled it "How Not to Die." So it's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. But it's important to know that, and I think in my practice, I think it's important to respect the variations. And if I see a client that's doing something dangerous with their diet, I'm absolutely going to speak up and say something. But like you said with your patient and the milk, we're talking about some very deep emotions and feelings and memories that can be associated with foods. And so I think it is important to make that connection in a way that's respectful and have that rapport so that we can make those small, consistent steps that will eventually lead to the best health for that client.
Well, I wanted to thank you, Dr. Kelly Morrow-Baez, again for not only coming on here, but for your references. You sent us 3 references. They're going to be in the show notes. That's going to be interesting. And as we wind down a little bit, why don't you tell people how they can get in contact with you? That would be important. Sure.
There are a few ways to reach me. My website is FitShrink.com. That's FITSHRINK. And you can also find me on Twitter at Kelly FitShrink or on Facebook at FitShrink.
Fantastic. You're out there. This is a good thing.
Absolutely. And I'd love for people to reach out with any questions or comments. I definitely look forward to it.
So, it's so much fun having the conversation because, like, just talking with you, I mean, in this short period of time, you've helped me understand some of the things that I experienced were difficulties with people. And I really hadn't thought about breaking it down as carefully as you have and starting smaller. And I really don't have a system in my practice for doing that. It'd be a reason for referencing this particular program. Because
thank you, I appreciate that.
It's a big deal because that is the problem, and I really hadn't thought about that. I want to express my gratitude for you pointing it out so succinctly and so carefully.
Thank you.
So, in closing, then, do you have any other remarks? We're winding down here, Kel. Anything else we'd like to tell people?
Well, I want to thank everybody for listening, and I also want to make sure that everyone understands that consistency beats intensity. I think if you can keep that in mind, that'll take you very far. Consistency beats intensity.
I think I need a tattoo.
I know I do.
Thank you so much, Kelly. That was great information. Dr. Kelly Morrow-Baez, we really appreciate your spending the time with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Core Brain Journal. We're working every day behind the scenes to bring you reports that connect research benches with those street trenches. Here we share the complexity of mind science because, as you know, details really do matter. One of the most pervasive, misunderstood challenges is how commonplace medications, like those written for ADHD, are used so regularly without clear guidelines. If you think you'd like more specifics, take a minute to download my 2-page PDF packed with video links and references on the absolute essentials of how to start ADHD medications. They're easily available at corebrainjournal.com/start. Thanks for listening. Do connect and stay tuned. Together we can make a difference.